Well, yes, of course, Trump is a true master at pulling off what we call leading the crayfish behind the rock. And with those 50 days, he suddenly, and for reasons no one understands, gave to Putin. He really left everyone puzzled. However, Senator Graham, regarding this 50-day period that Trump set in his ultimatum to Putin, suddenly said that, well, if it's not very clear what will happen, if it's not very clear what will happen on the 51st day, then he advises those who are confused to call the Ayatollah. But Senator Graham is without a doubt, undoubtedly a smart man, and without a doubt, a sweetheart. As a rule, he is precise. As a rule, he is witty. But his advice to call the Ayatollah can hardly be considered a good one. Well, let's say you do call, and having gotten through to that old fool, to his bunker, what will you hear? You'll hear a 1-hour lecture from the Ayatollah about Jewish Pekineggs who have long been tormenting Iran's righteous terrorists. Then Khamenei will mumble on for a long time about Iran's decisive victory over Israel and the USA. These old men will also tell you about the importance of American bombs, which have only strengthened Iran's underground nuclear program. Well, probably he'll also whisper about the unity of the Iranian people, economic growth, traditional values, and the triumph of Islamic spirituality. These aren't my fantasies. I'm not attributing anything to him. It's enough to look at his triumphant report, which is absolutely official, with which he spoke and which is now an official document. Yes, he announced that the Islamic Republic of Iran achieved victory over Israel as a result of the 12-day conflict. And with this, he congratulates the Iranian people. Well, the Ayatollah, he's learned his Russian lessons well, yes, and realized that any disgrace can and should simply be called a victory. Yes, that old Iranian man will keep spouting all this nonsense, hiding in an armored toilet 80 meters underground. Yes, most likely, he'll be speaking in a frightened whisper, but he's alive, he survived, and above the bunker, he and his vile corps of guards continue to run rampant. Alas, the United States of America bit into the Iranian regime and then let go without finishing the job. So it would probably make more sense for Senator Graham to suggest calling, say, Bin Laden or Saddam Hussein. Nevertheless, these 50 days still leave everyone restless. But let me remind you that Trump has never felt bound by anything he said yesterday. Moreover, Trump is absolutely not obliged to speak any kind of truth publicly. Well, first of all, in politics, the concepts of truth and falsehood don't really exist. And this applies even less to Trump. If we try to find reasons for his strange behavior, well, there are many versions, many interpretations, but let's take the best one. Let's take the most favorable. Trump understands somehow, miraculously understand that the issue of Moscow, the issue of Russia is a burning and poisonous problem. And of course, he's looking for a way not to get burned and not to be poisoned. That is hardly possible. But at the very least, he tries not to touch it with his bare hands, and for now is attempting to act through the European Union and, let's say, other reasonable forces in the world. But there is absolutely no point in delving into the clamor of global political science. It's not worth wasting time on one-day analysis. It's a pointless exercise. Political scientists are like ancient Roman augurs, those priests who divine the future by examining the entrails of animals. And these political scientists, like augurs, wink at each other. They understand just how much their forecasts and analyses are simply made up out of thin air. Don't waste your time on that. Trump's unpredictability far exceeds the imagination of analysts and forecasters. Moreover, it's clear that the twists and turns of today's drama are completely beyond anyone's control. It has become known that Putin has decided to ignore Trump's ultimatum. And Reuters, citing its sources in the Kremlin, reports that Putin does not intend to make any concessions and will continue his schizophrenic war. Yes, indeed, in response to Trump's ultimatum, Putin hissed back from his bunker. The ghoul announced that he would continue to rob and kill because without fresh blood, his complexion might worsen, and in general, he might get a bit constipated. The Kremlin ghoul still doesn't fully understand that he is merely a sick, pathetic clown performing in a grand, chaotic circus where Donald Trump is the primary ringmaster. And Putin doesn't realize that he absolutely shouldn't, under any circumstances, try to compare his manhood with the directors. Because even from the farthest Peredrishensky, the disparity between their equipment is obvious. However, well, you have to understand Putin too. Without fresh blood, he really will. Both he and his regime, without war, everything will collapse very quickly. And the sick inhabitant of the Kremlin cannot, moreover, he cannot argue with the mania that drives his actions and decisions. Somehow, the only way to deal with such a condition is in a hospital with the help of specialists and carefully selected medication, preferably in a room with padded walls. But for now, that's unrealistic. Yes. So, in any case, Putin still spat in the director's face. Once again, he struck a pose and said, "Why? Why do we need a circus without my act?" In doing so, he basically hinted at his desire to set the whole building on fire. The problem is that this loser actually has matches, really does. Donald Trump heard Putin and drew, let's say, a rather significant conclusion, a logical one. Donald Trump, the former president, recently stated that the critical deadline for the Russian Federation's significant ultimatum could potentially come much sooner than the anticipated 50 days from the current moment.